Everyone. This is Mostly Creative, first episode, first official episode. Welcome. I'm Shanice. I am remembering to say that because this is not the first time I've just filmed this. It's the second time, and I actually forgot to introduce myself. So making sure that I do it this time. So welcome. Um, this episode is more of like an introduction, seeing what the flow is going to be like, see how it goes. Um, if you guys already know who I am or are friends with me or quite close, you know that I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while. I've just not had the courage to do it. And I just thought, why not in 2026 start the year off right and just go for it? So we'll see where it takes me. I'll probably get sick of my own voice after some time, but it is what it is. And I hope everyone started the new year well and enjoying February so far, because I feel like January's been such a long month. Um, January was a bit of a weird one for me because, like I said, I was and ahhing over the podcast, didn't know whether to do it or not. Um, it was a very dry, long month. So it gave me a lot of reflection time and clarity on kind of where I want to go with this. Um, I'm jumping in straight ahead here. Let me start with the basics on why I wanted to do the podcast. So I just kind of wanted a platform where I could talk about design, really, UX, who I am, companies I've worked for, experiences I've had, for like people who are already in industry, people trying to get into industry. I know times are very tricky at the moment. People will be made redundant, losing jobs. So I know I'm hoping me talking about this stuff will help people. I have been there. I will talk about this as the episode goes on. But yeah, for now, I just wanted a platform just to basically talk. I tried LinkedIn. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the best at keeping up with posts. And also, I'm such a bad doom scroller. So I knew if I got hooked to LinkedIn, it would just turn into Instagram where I'm just checking things constantly. And, when you say you're going to bed at like 11 and then you scroll into like midnight. So I just didn't want it to be one of those things. So this is why I wanted to do my own podcast. So the name, Mostly Creative, I would love to say it just came to me, but it didn't. I went back and forth with so many names. I obviously had to consider names that were already out there. So I actually had some stronger contenders, but the name was already taken. So um I ended up with Mostly Creative. It's a little bit different. You'll see me look at my notes a couple of times because as this is the first episode, I'm trying to get into the rhythm of things, of talking, and sometimes my brain just goes blank, so it's just easier to write things down. But yeah, so the name Mostly Creative, um, I went through a phase in my career where I was making work my whole personality. It was just consuming me. Um, Maybe people have been there before where, we work 5 days a week, and it is a lot of our time, but it's not my whole personality. But I do think the creative side of me outside of work does influence how I think with work. So that's kind of where the mostly came from because although my job takes most of my time and being a designer is me, it's not all of me. I do like to think I have a life outside of work, but influences from like traveling, friends, community in Manchester, it influences who I am today. Okay, so let's talk about my design journey. Bit of an interesting one. maybe people have had similar experiences. So I went to uni, oh God, so many years ago now. I'm trying not to show my age, but I went to uni just over 10 years ago now. I studied creative media technology. So it was a bit of like a vocational course where it had web design, graphic design, animation, which I was horrendous at. Um, After Effects, so things like creating your own trailer, more of like the animation side where it's not like 3D modeling, more like titles and making things move across the page and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, it was a bit of a vocational course where it had loads of different things. I kind of went to uni knowing I wanted to be a designer, but I just didn't know what type of designer I wanted to be. And at that time, there wasn't really a, well, in my opinion, there wasn't really a thing on UX. It wasn't as popular and it wasn't really talked about. So I didn't know what UX was. It didn't really exist when I was at uni. So I'll tell you how I got there eventually into UX. But yeah, so it was a bit of a course where I had different stuff, development design. So it was front end development when Bootstrap was like a big thing. So people who don't know what Bootstrap is, it's a framework. I don't know if application is the right word, some sort of framework where you follow a type of code to build websites. But it's like a chunky API where you download something and then you get a big bulk of code and then you kind of decode from that. Um, did a bit of PHP as well, if anyone knows what PHP is. So that's like back end coding. So that was at Leeds back at university. That was 3 years. Love Leeds. Leeds was great. But after like a couple of years, I was very ready to come back to Manchester. I knew Manchester as well, wanted to live, and it was home for me. It's where my family are. So yeah, so I moved back to Manchester. From uni, I in my head, maybe I was delusional. I was thought I'll get a job straight away. I worked in retail prior to it, so I was like, I've got experience, I can just find a job. Even though it wasn't design, I was like, I've got the confidence, I can do it. And it literally took maybe like 11 months to find a job in industry. So, for my people who've just graduated uni, if you're struggling right now to find a job, it is absolutely normal. Like it, it's so competitive. There's so many people who want to get into design, and honestly, it is just about getting in front of the person who is interviewing you just to get your voice heard and sell yourself. And there was always that typical line of if I didn't get a job, we were looking for someone who's junior, but we needed someone with experience. So I actually did do work experience for, I want to say like 6 weeks. So I did 2 weeks in Leeds as a front end developer. And then I did a month at a design agency in Manchester. Jumping from uni to real life briefs, real life jobs was like the biggest jump ever. Uni does not prepare you for that. It's just so, so different. So I would definitely recommend trying to find some work experience if you can, even if it's unpaid, definitely do it because yes, it helps you when it comes to apply for a job, but also prepares you to not have the shock of your life when you actually do get a job. So the first job I got, my title, I think it was digital producer or something along those lines. So it's for a very small company in Manchester. I was the only designer besides my boss, who was the creative director. I was on 6 months probation. I honest to God didn't think I was gonna make probation. And that's me being completely honest. So I just couldn't get used to reading what like my boss wanted from me and just I didn't know how to I got feedback in uni, but getting feedback in real life from real people and real clients is completely different. So at first, when I was like 18 and I started off in industry, I took everything to heart when it came to feedback, and it wasn't productive. And it's okay if that happens, but I will say, as time goes on, you kind of have to take it on the chin being a designer with feedback because honestly, you create work just to get told this isn't quite right. Can you make it pop a little bit more? Um, yeah, there's just so much feedback you get from people, and it's not just senior designers you get feedback from. You get feedback from marketing, you get feedback from even from developers, just so many different people. So in my first job, I think my probation got extended, and then eventually my design work got better as I grew more confident. So in that first role, I would say I was very much a digital designer, more art worker. I did a little bit of front end development, but it was very like static, basic pages, one page sites. So it was very basic HTML and CSS. Didn't know anything else like JavaScript or jQuery. It was just very simple. But I really liked that I was able to tap into both. Maybe it was my bit of my personality because I don't like doing like the same thing like over and over again and not like trying different things. Um, so I was at my first job for 3 to 4 years. Um, Everyone was great, but then one day I went into work and I got told I was made redundant. And it literally felt like the world had just ended. Um, Never been made redundant before. That was my first job. I remember literally running into the bathroom and thinking, "Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" At this point, I didn't even have that much responsibility as an adult. I was 21. I just went into panic mode. And I just remember ringing my parents, like, I don't know what to do. I've been made redundant. This is obviously prior to COVID. So it wasn't as hard to find a new job. But when you're 21 and you want to just do the best, being told that you no longer have a job here anymore just felt horrendous. But I will say it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm obviously talking from privilege because I was 21 at the time. I think I was still living at home. So, I had my parents to fall back on, but I was moving like this at this job just purely because of like who I was and the size of the company and where the company was going. I wasn't growing in the speed that I wanted to, but I needed that safety net just to like pull from under me to move out of that job. And I genuinely think if I didn't get made redundant, I probably would have stayed there for a few more years. So I think it took 6, 7 weeks, oh no, not 6, 7, 6 or 7 weeks to find a job. Um, I was applying to everything. I was applying for front end development jobs. I was applying, even though I wasn't like highly skilled in that area. I was applying for front end development jobs. I was applying for digital designer. And then I actually got a job in Disbury. If anyone knows Disbury, I remember being absolutely nervous for this role. So what drew me to the role was that it was for a digital designer role, but I was the role was open to me learning front end development a bit more. So the person who was a little bit more senior to me at that job was doing simple HTML JavaScript games. Um, and they kind of needed someone who was a little bit more junior under them, who could help with the design as well as the development. So I thought, perfect, this is a great role for me. I can do design. I know a little bit of, development. It will be great for me. So I started this job in 2019, but this was 2019 September, just before COVID. So I got settled into the job. So this was the first time where I actually worked in a proper design team where I wasn't the only designer. And I think that was a bit rocky for me at first because I kind of latched onto the senior designer a little bit where I was kind of struggling to find my feet, but also just think for myself. I was trying to design like she was designing. Um, I'm pretty sure she knows who she is and knows that I'm talking about her because she was amazing. Um, and then COVID happened where everyone was told to go home, take their computers. I literally had the computer where it was a dock. So I had to carry that into my car, my two screens, and just drive home. Luckily, I had the space. I'd moved out at this point. I had the space to create my own office at home. So I honestly remember thinking, why am I moving home for work? I'm literally going to be home for 2 months. COVID's going to last for 2 months. What am I doing? And then it turned into like 2+ years. But being forced to work from home and not having the senior designer next to me, it made me really think on my own. And it was great. It did me wonders. So yeah, so I did that for a bit as a just a kind of like junior, tipping into middleweight designer. So it was a lot of email marketing design, some front end development, but still the basics. Um, some web design. But then the person who was a bit more senior to me, who was doing the HTML gaming, handed their notice in, and it was kind of like unexpected. So poor old me underneath that person as the only other front end developer in the marketing team had to step up and just think on my own. So I did a bunch of Udemy courses where I think it was like web development front end boot camp, I think it was called, something along those lines. And I just stuck my head into it and just put my head down and just did as much as I could. Um, Grew a lot of confidence, was making sure I was getting to know everyone in the team, which is really important. And I'll get back to that because I think communicating with other team members is super, super important. Um, yeah, so did that. COVID was happening. The world was just, I don't even know. It was just a crazy time. Um, and then we kind of started coming out of COVID. The rules were like relaxing a little bit. And then as soon as I was able to go back into the office, I ran to the chance to do that because people who know me, I prefer to work in the office and work with people. That in-person communication and actually understanding what people want is kind of where I strive. So I did that. And then luckily I had the chance to be promoted to senior, which was great. Loved it. Um, but we found that with some projects, we were finding that we were designing, everything felt great, but we found that there was some problems when we put products live, and it was because no one was really doing that initial kind of research, wireframing, the pre-production stuff at the beginning. It was kind of like straight to design, and it led to us finding out that things weren't working after the fact. But because I had that hybrid role where it was me designing and doing the development to then live, I felt the frustrations of this because I felt like I was spending a lot of time designing, but then also spending a lot of time of development and then seeing that things weren't working properly. So I knew that there was kind of an opportunity for someone in the business to look at the kind of behaviors of our customers, of looking at why things weren't working. So I kind of luckily had other designers to support me on this because we were a team of like a few where I want to say I like stood back from development a little bit because we hired a junior and then started looking into the UX design, sorry. So started doing courses again. Um Took it upon myself to go to talks on my own. So 3 years ago I went to Ladies That UX, went to their Christmas social, and just knew straight away this is what I wanted to do. I was welcomed by so many lovely people and just hearing their experiences in industry and what they do, why they do it, just like just pushed me to further develop my skills in UX. I then, after I want to say like a year or so, was introduced to Natter, is another UX community where people who are similar to myself want to know what other people are doing, listen to some great talks, did some great activities, and I just had that drive to want to help users get from point A to point B without any real frustrations. So everything I was learning out of work, I was bringing into work. Um, you know, Going to these talks is just perfect for me because I'm not one of those people, like, I've got a stack of design books, and I will tell myself that I will read all these books in a year, and I just won't. I just know what type of person I am. I just won't do it. Or it would take me a very long time to do it. So the best way for me to learn is going to do something, whether that is the activity, group activities, or being hands-on is the best way for me to learn. Um, so yeah, so all the outside like things I was learning, I was bringing into the business. My confidence was growing more and more. The relationships were building between myself and other people on the team within marketing. But then, even though I was enjoying the people I was surrounding myself with at work and I was doing pretty well, I felt like I had that itch I had when I was at my first job, where I felt like I was ready for a change. So this was in 2024, where I felt like I needed to do something else. Still in UX, but I was basically still having that development role in my title, and I was struggling to balance design and development. So where this kind of came from was I went to a development talk in Munich, and it was great. Love Munich, sorry, and great city. But I just felt like an absolute outcast, and I was surrounded by such talented developers. But when the people were talking at these talks, I just was my attention span is pretty bad. If you know me, you know my attention span is pretty bad. But I was just not focusing in these talks. And it was because all the stuff that these speakers were talking about sounded amazing, but I just felt like it was not me. Or if I wanted to pursue development, it needed my full attention. And I knew I did not want to give up design and UX. So I don't know. I've spoken to a few people who have had the same experience where they've started off as a developer and they've then fallen into design or been inspired to do design. So I came back from that conference thinking I need a role where it's either product design or just solely UX or solely UI. Because luckily in my role I was at, I was doing some of the Google Analytics and reporting. So I was involved from start to end. Um, so yeah, I knew I needed a new role. So I just thought, again, delusional, very delulu over here. I thought I could just find a job again. Um, it'll be fine. Put it this way, I started looking for a job in 2024 and I did not find a new job till 2025. I was seeing a lot of people on LinkedIn in the same situation where they wanted to change their career or they unfortunately got made redundant and they could not find a job. So I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck in this role. I'm not happy. It was affecting my mental health. I didn't know what to do. So I must have done, I kid you not, I must have done about 4 portfolios, websites. Like I just kept changing my mind. I felt like my portfolio wasn't right. Um, yeah, I just couldn't find a job. So portfolio, this is a great segue to portfolios and what has worked for me. My portfolio went through so many iterations because I just didn't know how to sell myself. I'm always best selling myself when it's in person because I can show my personality to people. I can look at people in the eye. I can tell them who I am as a person, everything. I can crack a joke from time to time. Um, but when it comes to actually writing down why you should give me a job and what experiences I've had in UX in my role, I just couldn't do it. Um, honestly, and this is just my experience, my portfolio got better when I started to show people. I started to show people, I started to be more receptive on feedback. I started to take my feelings out of everything. I just tried to take it not as serious as it actually was because that's where my passion for UX and my personality wasn't showing because I was just lacking the I just think UX is just a lot on caring about what you're creating. And I was approaching my portfolio not like a project. I was approaching my portfolio like I was fighting for my life. So the human touch was being lost on my portfolio. So when I started to tap into why I wanted to do UX and get into a role, that's where my portfolio was getting better and better. Um, I started, speaking to mentors. I started speaking to people more about my personal experiences when I went to things like Ladies the UX and Natter. Um, and then I had a few interviews and they were great. The agencies I was speaking to, bearing in mind I've never worked in an agency before prior to this. I've always worked in house, so that was nerve wracking in itself. Um, honestly, when you go to job interviews, you learn so much. So if you don't get a job, don't take it as like it was a waste of time. Take it as, okay, I've not got this job. What can I learn from this? Um, so I created my portfolio on Squarespace. Squarespace was great because even though I could technically code my portfolio, I just wanted to focus on the design. And also with Squarespace, you can add some HTML and CSS in there. So you can personalize it a bit more if you do want to do that. Um, I would recommend a website over than a PDF, but that's just my personal opinion. Just because you just know people look at your portfolio, especially recruiters, they look at your portfolio when they're doing something else. Maybe it's on their phone whilst they're on the move. They're looking at your CV on their computer, so they quickly open it up. With a PDF, sometimes I think people can be a little bit lazy with PDF just because of where the world is moving a little bit. Everything's online. People love to scroll. Um, yeah, so use Squarespace. Had some interviews. I also did some freelance as well, but I did some freelance branding, not UX. And then eventually I found my d- dream UX role as a senior UX designer in summer last year, um, which was amazing. Great feeling. I just felt like I've been looking for a job for so long. It was agency, never done agency before. Um, so I was very excited to like get to know what agency life is like. I've heard so many things about agency. Some people say it's great, some people say it's very like quick, no time for like basically no time for, you know, procrastinating basically. Just put it politely. So yeah, got my first agency job in Manchester. First time where I've had to like clock my time and as in like how long I'm spending on things, everything is built, not used to that. So that was like that took some time to get used to. Um, so yes, that was good until I was there for just under 2 months and then circumstances changed unfortunately, and then I got made redundant for the second time. Now, I am speaking to the people who have been made redundant before more than once. Redundancy hits different when it's the second time. I was in flight, or I can't remember the saying. I was basically in like cry, and then I was in, maybe because I'm an adult now and I have a lot more responsibility, I took it really hard. But then after I got everything out, I was like, what's next? I just had this like motivation to find a job. Maybe because I had no backup, and like I said, I had bills to pay. I had nothing prepared for this. I had left a steady, comfortable job for 6 years and then left it to work somewhere else and then to then get made redundant. So maybe that lit the fire up me because I had to find a job to basically survive. Um, so yeah, so I got made redundant. I honestly will say being made redundant really highlighted this time round how much the UX community is so important. So I actually didn't post on LinkedIn that I got made redundant for about 4 weeks. And I honestly think it was because of pride. I just didn't want to admit that I got made redundant. It was my second, even though it was out of my hands, it wasn't anything to do with who I was, or, I didn't go in and start causing chaos and ruckus or anything. It was just the circumstance of the business. Um, so yeah, so I just couldn't post on LinkedIn. it was just a horrible feeling. I just felt like I had basically failed. Um, and even though I was told that I hadn't done anything wrong, it felt like I had done something wrong just because it was the second time I'd been made redundant. Um, and then I started to realize I had this epiphany where it was just like, I am human. I am not the only person in the world who has been made redundant. So why not tell people I've been made redundant, and why not like use the opportunity to like ask for help from the people who have been great to me in the community. So I did a LinkedIn post last year. I think it was like September time, just telling everyone I got made redundant. And the amount of people who reached out to me was just amazing. Privately on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, um, commenting on LinkedIn. I was so shocked at the amount of people who just reached out and said, like, whether they didn't have a job for me, it was just, you know, I'll keep an eye out if anything comes up. I was super surprised. And honestly, I think it just, those people kept me going and not get me into a rut, because I can get in a bit of a rut. And it stopped me from, you know, having any bitterness or anger towards the situation I was in, because I saw on LinkedIn as well that I was not the only person who was going through this. Um, and luckily, like, I don't have, yes, I have responsibilities and I have a roof over my head that I need to pay for, but there's people out there who have children, people who take care of people, who have been made redundant. So I was lucky on that side where I didn't have that. Um, but it still stung. It still really hurt that I got made redundant. Um, but yeah, so that was a couple of months of having no job, which was interesting. I did a lot of it was hard because it was like I did a lot of like gym, but then these things like gym and hobbies cost money. But if I didn't do that, I would literally just eat out and just go out and spend money, and I can't be doing that if there's not money coming in. I did a little bit of freelance. I did like a couple of weeks of freelance, but obviously a couple of weeks of freelance um does not equate to a full month's income. Um, so yes, again, I had actually deleted my portfolio prior, prior to me getting that agency job. So I had to then bring this portfolio back up, start the portfolio again. Yes, so redid my portfolio, was looking for jobs for over a month. Luckily, the people that reached out to me on LinkedIn, that led to interviews from there. So, the people in the community, speaking with them, seeing what's out there. I even considered going freelance. But I think it's a little bit scary going freelance, like full time, when you don't have anything else coming in, or if you've not actually prepared for it. So I didn't actually take that risk of doing that full time, but that doesn't mean that I can't do it in future. Um, One thing I will say being made redundant is, especially when you don't have an actual job distracting you, is that you learn that you're, in theory, not a tree, if that makes sense. You're never going to be anywhere forever. And that, I think being at a company for many years has pros because it shows your loyalty, etc. But my problem is in the past is that I stay somewhere for too long, that I get a bit too comfortable. So I think me basically being thrown in the deep end of not having a job has made me a little bit stronger and resilient to having to look for a job, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, so I was applying to different things and I managed to get a job in the automotive industry. So that is completely different to me. Um, and if anybody knows, I'm laughing because if anybody knows me, they know that I do not understand cars like one bit. If my tire goes, anything goes, a light comes up, I don't know car models, anything, I either Google or it's like I have to call my parents because it just it's just too much. Um, but I kind of liked that because it was like, you know what, this is going to be a new challenge for me. And at the end of the day, users are users, and what just because I don't know enough in that industry doesn't mean that I still can't enjoy the job, if that makes sense. So I went to the interview just with an open mind, and it just ended up going good for me. And I ended up getting a job, and I was very lucky to get a job after a couple of months because I know people out there who are still, who got made redundant around the time I did and are still looking now, unfortunately. So yeah, so I've been there now for almost, when this gets released, probably 6 months. So I'm enjoying it so far. Um, yeah, I kind of want to use this as a segment, like just like a section to talk about um, imposter syndrome, because I feel like I kind of jumped and was talking about my experiences being made redundant and everything like that. But I feel like imposter syndrome, especially when I got made redundant the first time. And then when I left my job that I felt like I was a bit stagnant in, I had massive imposter syndrome. And I think it's because I like the previous jobs I've been at for a long time, and I don't think I understood my value in a company fully. Um, in the sense of I understood my value within the company I was in, but I didn't know my value outside that company. And I think that's very easy to do. But this again goes back to going to these like community talks because you build an understanding of how other companies work and also how you could sit in those other companies. Um, and sometimes you've just got to build yourself up and don't underestimate the talent that you do have. Um, I've always said, and this is just me, is that I don't want to be like the smartest in the room or in a company. But that doesn't mean that I don't have a brain, if that makes sense. Um, and I say that to say it's because I always want to learn, and I feel like there's always room for me to learn. Even, as I progress in my career and become more senior, I think the only way of me learning is to speak with other people in different walks of life. Um, I just don't like feeling too comfortable because when I get too comfortable, I don't know where I'm going, if that makes sense, because I'm just still. And I don't mean that just staying in one role and staying in one company, because I've known people who've had very successful careers staying in the one company. I just mean in the sense of not learning off other people. Um, yeah, I think that's one thing I appreciate massively and has helped me understand where I sit in industry. So I can't emphasize enough of getting yourself out there. And I understand that a lot of people aren't confident, sorry, and don't feel comfortable in those settings. So I will say even things like UXL, like you can be part of like different challenges and speak to people on chats and be on a leaderboard, even little things like that. Um, UXL also do online video calls where someone is doing a presentation. So you can actually join them and have your camera off and comment and talk to other people without actually showing your face. So that's another thing if you know, you want to get yourself out there without actually getting yourself out there, if that makes sense. Um I'm hoping to or will be sharing like things I have used to help me get myself out there, talks, apps, everything. Yeah, I think sharing's caring basically. And I feel like I wouldn't be where I am now if people didn't share with me and show their experiences. Um, and I think my confidence wouldn't be improving if I didn't use those resources, definitely. Um, yeah. So I've done a lot of rambling, and like I said, this section, this podcast, I really just want it to be super, super chilled. Um, it's probably going to be unpolished, but that's just who I am. I did a lot of back and forth whether or not to do video or just voice, but I feel like again, if I have video and you can see me, I feel like it's a bit more personal. Um, I've promised to try not go on a tangent. Maybe people like tangents, I don't know. Um, yeah, so please, people be kind and like, share, do all of that. What I'm hoping to do is have a section where people can ask questions. So whether that be email or to write on the LinkedIn page or social media on Instagram. I'll put all the handles down below um, of things they want me to talk about. I do have some just like ideas for next podcast episodes and people I do want to talk to. So the future podcast won't just be me rambling on about who I am, what I do. This was just for the intro and the first episode. So yeah, I hope you guys actually like the podcast and want to listen more. And intrigued what the future podcast will be. So yeah, bye.